Welcome back. We are continuing the exploration of social emotional learning. Self-management is the topic for today. In the classroom, we often overwhelm ourselves trying to manage all the students. But what if we could teach them to manage themselves? Imagine that. Got your attention? Let's take a look at some options for performing the miracle of students self-regulating. All right, so we're going to jump right into the SEL series. The second part of this series, self-management in education. So we're going to have an overview, purpose, look at some key traits and strategies, benefits, examples, and then we'll close out with our keys to remember. So what is self-management? It's the second phase of SEL, social emotional learning, SEL. It involves, after becoming aware of ourselves and aware of our behaviors and aware of, our emotions and feelings. Now since we're aware of them, now we can go through the process of developing and identifying strategies to help regulate those things. So it's the regulation of emotions, thoughts, and behaviors. It focuses on goal setting, impulse control, and stress management. So as you can see, all of these aspects could be highly beneficial when you're talking about the classroom setting. So what's the purpose? You want to improve emotional regulation, promote independence, support focus, and reduce disruptions. So notice how reduce disruptions is the last one. Not necessarily intentionally, but that's just the way it worked. But we want to improve the emotional regulation. So the ability of the student, the child, to regulate their own emotions, right? And we don't want to control them. We want to promote their independence. We want to promote the fact that they can do it themselves. And then we want to provide support. So when they struggle, we're providing suggestions, advice, coaching to help them, get over and further regulate when they run into tough times. And by doing all of this, we can reduce disruptions simply because students are more cognizant, they're aware of it, and now they have the means, ways, and support to regulate their emotions, behaviors, and feelings. So what are the key traits? Self-discipline, emotional control, goal setting, organization, and perseverance. So self-discipline, we have to make ourselves aware of our behaviors so we can identify what specifically we need to do on a consistent basis in order to control ourselves, right? The emotional control, the goal setting, putting a goal in front of us that we're working towards. We want to organize. We want to make sure that we're not functioning in a chaotic manner. And when we do all these things, now we have the motivation to persevere. I know I can do it. I have means and ways. I've seen it, and I have a goal to get to. So what are some considerations? You have to consider the developmental needs of the particular students, the cultural responsiveness, trauma informed. Again, we talked about this in self-awareness. It's not saying that the teacher, becomes a trauma specialist. No, but once they can identify the trauma, they can provide the relevant supports and resources for the student. Consistency across the board, consistency. And then modeling, as the teacher, am I modeling the behaviors of self-management? Do I just fly off the hinges every time something happens, or do I take a breath, breathe again, and then respond? Or do I go off of impulse? Because if I go off of impulse, student throws a pencil and I just go off, well, guess what? Our students are going to model those behaviors. So when things happen for them that they don't like, they are going to do the same thing. And we as educators have to be mindful. The throwing of the pencil irritates us, right? Okay, the throwing of the pencil irritates us, we go off. Well, Maybe students stepping on somebody else's shoe as they walk down, the aisles of the classroom. Maybe that's what irritates this student, and he goes off. Oh, well, it's not that serious. Well, the throwing of the pencil wasn't that serious either. And you went off, so why can't I go off? So modeling becomes a big deal when it comes to social emotional learning, especially with self-management, because we want to model how students can manage their behaviors. So what are some strategies? Teach calming strategies. We talked about the breathing. We talked about the breathing. You can have, calming corners. What else? You can have reflections, journals. You can have SMART goals. You can have routines, and then you have behavior tracking. So the calming strategies, we can pull some of those if we need to do a follow-up video on the calming strategies. I think it's being self-fulfilling at this point. So we're going to do a calming strategies, what strategies you can use. But the SMART goals keep us focused on why we're trying to regulate our behaviors and manage our behaviors and manage ourselves. Reflection journals. What have I done? What can I do better? Routines that helps with the consistency and the self-discipline. And then behavior tracking, understanding, I tend to do these behaviors on Monday and Friday. Why is that? Or by the middle of the week or later in the day, these are when my behaviors, come up the most. Why is that? And reflecting on that. So what are some classroom practices? Some suggestions: morning check-ins. We've talked about those. Visual schedules. How are things going to go? Calm down corners, and then break systems. It is unrealistic to believe that students from 7 a.m. until 3 p.m. are just going to be totally engaged academically, consistently. That's not even humanly possible, right? So we have to build in break systems, give students a chance to break, reflect, take a breath, let up, boom, recharge, get back to it. So what are the benefits for the teachers when these self-management approaches are implemented? You have better management of the students. Why? Because you're not trying to control everything. You're teaching the students how to control themselves rather than you trying to control everything. You have less disruptions. You have stronger relationships. You're building relationships. You're helping students understand who they are and how they can regulate themselves. And with all that going on, you have more instruction time because now you're not focused in on, addressing all these behaviors that were disrupting the classroom. And when we talk about more instruction time, it could be more instruction time for self-management. You may find, this is working so well. We need to continue this. We need to make this a part of, our daily, lesson plan, at least for the next month or so, because students are, benefiting from it. So when we say more instruction time, it doesn't necessarily have to be academics. It could be more instruction time about SEL or other things. So what are the student benefits? They're more focused because they understand who they are and they understand how to regulate themselves. They have better regulation. They have improved decisions because they're aware of what their behaviors are causing and the consequences or benefits of changing their behavior. And they have higher motivation because that efficacy starts, increasing when they have success. So what are the school benefits? You have a more positive climate. You have fewer referrals, better attendance, and stronger relationships. The impact on achievement. We're in education. We're going to talk about it. You have more on-task behavior. Students are regulating themselves. They're getting guidance about how to regulate themselves. And so they have more on-task behaviors. In addition, you have better test scores. Why? Because there's more instructional time being allocated, simply because we're not dealing with the disruptions, as well as, don't forget, we have that increased efficacy, we have more engagement, and we have more motivation, which, when we utilize it academically, can result in better test scores. Higher completion, students are more motivated and willing to try different tasks, new tasks, because they have regulation of their behaviors and they have more persistence. They've seen success, that the efficacy is building. And so when times get tough, they're able to self-reflect, become self-aware of what the challenges are, and address them through the regulations. So what are some elementary examples for teaching students self-management? We have emotion charts, in which students can identify what their emotions are for that day, which prompts the instruction of, okay, this is how you're feeling. How do we deal with this feeling? How do we deal with this feeling? If it's a good feeling, how do we maintain it? If it's a negative feeling, how do we address it? We want to acknowledge that negative feeling. We don't want to suppress it. It's not, oh, just ignore that and push on. No. Why are we feeling that way? What is it we can do in order to not feel that way? Okay. Breathing exercises, we talked about that. Sticker goals, hey, the more you regulate, the more stickers you get. Boom. Ultimately, there's some grandiose prize. And then structured transitions. We want to make sure that students understand how to go, how to regulate their emotions, so that when they transition from one class to the other, they understand, hey, this is what we do. We set those routines. We talked about it earlier, about the routines and how that can provide the self-discipline necessary in order to self-manage. Middle school examples, you can have planners. What am I going to do? I come into class. What am I going to do today? Okay, I'm going to do my warm-up. I'm going to make sure that I don't engage with my peers until my warm-up is finished, because oftentimes what happens with me is I engage with my peers, I don't get my warm-up done, and then that throws off my whole day. So this is individualized. I'm speaking, as if I'm the student, right? So I want to plan out and understand how to discipline myself to effectively participate in the classroom. You can have peer groups, journaling, and then of course behavior charts, so that students can see how their behaviors are impacting themselves and others. Some high school examples: goal setting, teaching them time management. This is a big thing for high schoolers, even middle schoolers, really, because they're involved in so many different things, it can become overwhelming, right? So stepping back, hold on, this is what I have to do. How much time can I allocate, or do I need to allocate, so that I'm not overwhelmed? Stress workshops. What are some strategies to deal with stress? Maybe you take a day, with the high schoolers and say, okay, let's talk about some stress techniques, right? Stress relieving techniques. And maybe you have a workshop, every Thursday before the weekend comes, because that's when they're most stressed. And then you can have reflection logs. And in keeping with the stress workshop or reflection log, let's say you have the stress workshop on a Thursday, they go through the weekend. When they come in Monday, hey, what techniques did you use? How effective were they? Were there some that you could have used that you didn't use? So you can tie all these things together. So what are some keys to remember? Teach self-management explicitly. Do not assume students know how to do it. Do not assume that they should know how to do it. Teach it explicitly, right? Be consistent. We don't just introduce it at the beginning of the year. Oh, self-management is important, and then we don't talk about it again. We want to be consistent, whether it's daily, if that's what's required by that student population. Your student population may need to see this daily. Other populations, you know what? They pretty much have the concept. They know how to do things. We just need to fine tune it. So maybe we do it once a week. You adjust the consistency as to the need of your student population. You want to model it daily, though. You want to be the example of self-management. You, as the instructor, want to be the model of self-management. And then you want to reinforce behavior. So when they're managing correctly, you want to acknowledge that and celebrate it. Okay. So reinforce the behaviors that that students are exhibiting, that demonstrate that they understand the concept of self-management. And by celebrating that, you build the efficacy, and it becomes a snowball in a positive manner. All right. We hope that was helpful. Remember, Self-management is the second stage of SEL. Revisiting self-awareness on a regular basis strengthens students' ability to self-manage. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. See you next time. We hope